Welcome everyone to our third Friday workshop of this month. Our webinar for today is going to be on the topic of a consultant's legal checklist. We are joined today by the team at New Business Community Law Clinic and the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. And we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Wells Fargo, for sponsoring today's webinar. My name is Sandra Vidrio, and I'm the Business Development Officer here at the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. And I want to take a few minutes to share about the chat, the tools to use in the chat box. And the presentation for today is going to be translated by the team at Lingüística Team. So, si usted se está conectando en español, por favor de seleccionar la opción de escuchar la presentación de hoy en español. El equipo de Lingüística Team, Emilia, va a estar haciendo la traducción. Así que aquí están las direcciones para cómo activar esta opción en su tableta, teléfono o computadora. I want to say thank you to the following companies as well for their support towards our organization. So thank you to Bank of America, Comcast, Bank of the West, Bank of the Sierra, Chevron, Donna G Sales, Union Bank, JP Morgan Chase and Company, and Wells Fargo. Thank you so much for your support towards our organization and for allowing us to continue to bring these valuable webinars to our small business owners throughout the country. Our agenda for today, I will go ahead and do some welcome announcements, and we will continue with having Bill Cow, our speaker for today, present to you the presentation, and we will end with a Q&A session. So I want to say, for those of you that is your first time joining, my name, I mentioned, his name is Sandra, and the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation is here to serve the small business owners in our community. We have, these are some of our 3 signature programs in addition to additional programming that's available. And so we're here to meet with you one-on-one to talk about your business strategy. If you're looking to start a business, we have some really great ways that we can help you with the business plan development phase of it, as well as how to create the financial projections for the success of your business. And we have continuous programming with webinars. So we try to do our best to make sure we have a webinar being offered once a week. And we also have our CDFI program where we offer microloans, not just to small business owners, but we also have a new program where we're offering loans to consumer for personal lending. So if you are in need of some type of looking for some type of financial assistance when it comes to looking for a microloan, please give us a phone call. Our phone number here, 559-222-8705. You can also follow us on our social media, and all of the webinars for all of our sessions that we have, they are recorded and they are stored in our YouTube gallery. So please take a second if you're interested to check out additional content. And with that, I want to inform you of our next workshop here with the team at New Business Community Law Clinic. We are going to be ending the year with our final third Friday workshop on December 17th. And the topic is going to be on demystifying contracts. So teaching the small business owners, individuals, how to write, review, and enforce contracts. So up in the screen is the meeting ID for the meeting. And of course, you can always schedule a one-on-one meeting directly with the team by visiting the website and the link that's shown on this presentation screen. And with that, that is it for my welcome remarks. I would now like to introduce Bill Cow. And Bill, you let me know if you need me to share the presentation slides, okay?
Thank you very much, Sandra. Also want to introduce Desiree LaFleur, our deputy attorney who's on the call here. And there's a possibility that if the Wi-Fi connection here isn't so good, Desiree may take over for me. I apologize in advance for that. I'm down in Monterey, and the place that I'm staying, it turns out the internet isn't quite so reliable. So I'm actually parked here outside of a Starbucks in Pacific Grove. So coming to you live. So, okay, well, thanks everybody. And thanks, Sandra, for the nice introduction. So I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oops, because I need to.
Okay, let me make you host, and you should be able to share your screen now.
All right, here we go. All right, very good. And I'll try and let people in as they come in, if I can see them there. Yeah. But here we go. Let's get to the presentation here. Thank you, everybody. By the way, we serve a lot of different businesses, and what we found in the past is that consultants people who are sharing their information, their expertise with people, are a particular kind of entrepreneur that, have particular risks. So this is why we put this workshop together for you. A number of ways to manage that risk when, people are sort of relying on your advice is the idea there. So without further ado, let me actually, just in case it would help, let me just turn off my camera. Can I do that? Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, let me just turn off my camera. That way they'll use less bandwidth there. Okay, very good. So first thing, of course, we always want to say is that this doesn't substitute for, individualized legal advice for you. You can always sign up for our office hours where you can get individualized advice. This is just an introduction to sort of the general legal framework in which you operate, the legal landscape there. But do contact us if we can give you some individualized advice. We'd love to do that. All right, well, here you go. Consultant's legal checklist. First, I guess I'd say, let's identify what we're talking about. And consulting, what we think of it is you're in business for yourself. You're sharing your expertise. And then you're also getting some compensation for that sharing of expertise there. So, that raises certain legal questions, okay? So first of all is, if you're in business for yourself and you're doing this, should there be some separation between you and the business? And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. Also, do you need a license or a permit to do your business? There's some guidance we can give you on that. Also then, assuming you are in business for yourself, sharing that expertise, how do you manage the risks involved in that? I mean, people relying on you and, maybe not guaranteeing certain outcomes, but, people can be unhappy if they don't get certain outcomes. So we could talk a little bit about the risks involved in that. And finally, this is important because particularly there's been a change in the law in California, more restrictions on people hired as independent contractors. The question here is, do you qualify under the new laws for being an independent contractor? So we're going to give you some guidance on that too. Okay. And by the way, just as I'm going along, because of the, concern about the connection here, do speak up if for some reason it's just, the connection is getting faulty or something, then we'll jump into action on that. All right, well, let's go through each of these questions here. Okay, should there be separation between you and the business? If you're a sole proprietor, there isn't any separation between you and the business. Your obligations are the business's obligations and vice versa. And also, as we'll tell you in a minute, there's personal liability that goes with that, you see. So here's what we might suggest is forming a legal entity. That's what can create that separation between you and the business. And what does that mean? That means that you're less likely to be on the hook for the business's obligations. It's called limited liability. We generally recommend this if you're doing anything risky. I mean, I don't know. I mean, in the 12 years we've been out here, 13 years there, I think we've only advised 2 businesses that they didn't really need limited liability. One was a used book business, and one was a bow tie company. And we couldn't actually think of any way that people could be killed in either of those activities. However, I suppose a bookshelf could fall over on somebody. And if you put a Mickey Mouse on your bow tie, then Disney would come after you personally. So everybody could really use limited liability, I think. And again, if you don't form this entity, then the law will presume that you will cover all of the business's obligations. I mean, up to, everything, your house, your car, your bank account, everything, okay? So limited liabilities are usually a good way to, limited liability companies are usually a good way to start. Why is that? Well, it's got a few advantages. It's easy, cheap to form. It's like $70. You file online, happens the next day, once you file online. And what it does is it creates that separation so that you can take obligations on for the business. And then if the business can't fulfill those obligations, then it's really the business's responsibility. And ultimately you could walk away from that responsibility if you wanted to just say, look, take whatever in my business, if there was a lawsuit or something. Now, here's another aspect that's really easy is it's called pass-through taxation for this kind of an entity. That means that basically the entity itself doesn't pay tax. So you avoid one layer of tax right there. But then also, it's easy then because the income and the losses that might result from it pass through to you personally. And what that means is, well, first, on the income side, you just pay taxes as though, any other income that you got, so your particular tax bracket. But in terms of losses, that means that you can use the losses to offset other income that you might have. So that's a really good thing, because often with a new business, there's losses and stuff. And if you had more like a corporation, which some people may have to form, I'll tell you more about that in a second. But a corporation can only take the losses. A C corporation can only take the losses as the corporation itself, and there are a lot of restrictions on it. And so, you can't really realize the benefits of that quite so much, you see. You can raise capital. The limited liability company creates a vessel within which, capital providers can give you loans and investment and stuff. That's really good. They can't do that if you're a sole proprietor. And this is the one that we really love best. And that is that for folks who may not be for immigrant entrepreneurs that have citizenship or right to work, then this works like just any other entity. But for folks who aren't documented, then you could still use the limited liability company to earn profits because you're not earning a wage. It's not like it matters whether you have a right to work. It's because you're earning profits, and any entrepreneur can earn profits from their business, even if they don't have citizenship or right to work. Okay. Donald Trump earns all kinds of profits, probably mostly losses, with companies he might own in Dubai, but he, isn't a citizen of Dubai. That's not an issue there. So again, for you folks who are undocumented, this is the way to earn your living. And then there are other entity types. I'm going to focus on the LLC because I just think it's so easy to form and manage if you're a single person or a couple of people. But you have to note that licensed professionals, if you're doing your business as a licensed professional, you may need to form a corporation for that. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute or two. Okay, here we go. And by the way, folks, as you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them in order when we finish up. Okay. So here's that separation question again. Okay, well, here's for the LLC. As I said, I wanted to focus a little bit on the LLC because it's just so easy, and we can easily help you set this up going forward, very cheap. There are some disadvantages. Okay, first of all, this is that disadvantage that some entrepreneurs, if you have to do your business with a license, then an LLC sometimes works, sometimes not. Generally not. Okay, but we'll go over that in just a little bit to see a little bit more what that means. Now, you should know that, of course, an LLC, like any other corporation or any other limited liability entity, it doesn't actually protect you for your own professional malpractice or negligence. Okay, and what does that mean? We'll go into that in just a minute, but essentially in the state of California, and I guess any other state really, you can't form a limited liability entity around yourself to protect you from, the consequences of giving advice. The only way that you can really protect that is, of course, by being very careful, but also by getting insurance. And so me giving you, this advice today, well, again, this isn't advice, but if I was advising you individually, yeah, the only thing that I can do is just be super careful and have insurance to back me up if I make an error. Okay. But it will see. So you may ask, well, why then form the thing at all? Well, you may have obligations under the LLC, like you take on a loan, or maybe you have a contract with somebody to provide services and you aren't able to fulfill that contract. Yeah, again, creating some separation between you and the business then allows you to escape some liability for that. But we'll cover that a little bit more in a minute. It does come with some extra taxes. Okay, so in the second year, not the first year, second year, you would start paying this $800 a year franchise tax, minimum franchise tax. That's regardless of whether you make any money at all. Okay, and then if you're lucky to make more than 250K a year, there's another tax that comes in on your gross receipts. Again, that's only for LLCs making over 250K a year. Right, well, let's find out a little more how to form one of these things. Okay, well, anyone 18 years or older can own an LLC. in California. Entities can also be LLC members as well. So if a corporation wanted to be a member of an LLC, they could do that. Yeah. Or an LLC could be a member of an LLC. But as I said, professionals who require license generally cannot form LLCs. Here's how it goes. Okay. So first, you have to think about if you are licensed or certified or registered under this part of the California law called the Business and Professions Code. Okay, so what you'd probably want to do is maybe take your particular profession, I don't know, manicurist or psychologist or whatever, plug that into a Google search and then add the words Business and Professions Code. And that way it might then pop up, the law would pop up as to whether you need to be licensed or not. I actually have a link in a moment that I'm going to share with you that is a little easier link to find out who needs to be licensed in California. The thing is, it doesn't distinguish between the Business and Professions Code and the other codes. You can't form an LLC, you can't do your business under an LLC if your license is listed in the Business and Professions Code in particular. Okay. Okay. So here you go. The second question. So if you found that you need to be licensed in the Business Professions Code, well, then you're probably needing to form a corporation to create this limited liability shield. Just so you know, a corporation, there's two kinds you would form. You could either form a regular corporation, generally, where anybody can own stock and anybody can be on your board. Or you could form what's called a professional corporation. And in that situation, only licensed professionals can be on your board, you see. So how can you tell which one it is? Well, in that situation, and we just did this recently, you have to call your licensing board, your licensing office, and say, hey, can I form a corporation? Or first, I guess I'd ask them, can I form an LLC? And usually they'll say no. But then if you say, okay, well, what kind of corporation can I form? Like just recently, I did this with an engineer, and the engineering licensing board said, oh, we don't care. General corporation or professional corporation, doesn't matter. Okay. All right, so here you go. The third prong here, again, I'm saying check with your licensing board to see if you indeed can operate through an LLC. There's this other little thing which is kind of weird, but here's how I describe it is, if your licensing office doesn't know, but you need to get certified or licensed somehow, maybe somebody is telling you need a certification or something like this. The question is, okay, first, is it in the Business and Professions Code, as I said, but if you can't find it there, then there's a question about, well, maybe you're doing what we call non-professional activities, and that's not pejorative. We're not saying it's, lame or something. We're just saying that it's not considered in California to be professional services. So what would that be an example of? Well, here's one, for example. We had this a couple of weeks ago. Somebody was providing interpretation like at a court or at a hospital or something like that. We looked, and first we found that they weren't in the Business and Professions Code. It was only that the court required them to be certified, I think in terms of proficiency of Spanish or something like that. So we found that they were not only not required to be licensed, but they also were providing a service that wasn't sort of professional in nature. They didn't need to potentially get a degree from a school. It just they needed to be a proficient in some fashion in what they were doing there. So if you have a question about this, I guess one thing I would do is wait until this next slide where I give you a list of the professions that need to be licensed. But if you have a question, yeah, go ahead and email us about that, and we can probably figure it out for you. Okay. So here's a limited liability entity, okay? So the distinction here is personal liability. That means like, yeah, your soul gets hurt. Well, right now, you have all the liability related to that. Somebody slips and falls in front of your store. If you're a sole proprietor, if you didn't get insurance, you would be responsible for that slip and fall there, okay? Personally, okay? But then if you form this LLC, this corporation, well, this is how you create this shield that might be able to shield you and you would only be liable for your contributions to the business, what the business has in its bank account, that sort of thing. So here's an example of that. Okay, so let's say you have a company, you have a delivery truck, it runs somebody over. Who could be liable in this scenario? Okay, well, if you got limited liability, okay, the business would be liable. Okay, so if you had the LLC or corporation, the business would be liable for that person's injuries. But you note here also the driver is always responsible for their driving. Just like if you were a psychologist, you would always be responsible for your advice. That's the place where I was saying you can only really protect yourself with insurance. Okay, but you see, if you don't get limited liability, you don't form an LLC or corporation, then all the owners, any shareholders, you personally are on the hook for everything that the business does, you see. And there are a few, exceptions to this limited liability shield that I mentioned already. There's personal negligence. Of course, if you made a personal guarantee on a loan, then, your limited liability shield wouldn't help you. Of course, intentional acts, things like that. Under capitalization, that's another one I suppose I should show you. So this would be like if you created a business that was like an electric car company and it only had $500 in the bank. Okay, well, in that situation, if something went wrong with one of your electric cars, a court might say, well, wait a second here. You have $500 in the bank and you're trying to back up things that go wrong with your electric cars. I'm sorry, that's like a fraud. You're not there to back up your products. So that's what's called undercapitalization. You might lose your shield with them. And of course, formalities. Now, one of the things on formalities you should know is that that's one reason we suggest the LLC, because there are basically very few formalities. You can have as many meetings as you want or as few as you want. You don't have to do like bylaws and corporate minutes and stuff like that. So that's why we tend to push the LLCs there. But a corporation, again, will provide you this limited liability shield just as well. All right. So now, how do you form this thing? Okay. Well, you got your $70. You can register it online at this link here. Now, one thing we do caution at this point, and particularly, is that it's best to wait until the first of the year or early in a calendar year if you're going to do this. Why? Because that franchise tax that franchise tax holiday only is good for the first calendar year. So if you formed your LLC right now, you would start paying your franchise tax in January. Whereas you wait until January, you're going to have a whole year before you have to pay that franchise tax. So this is why, best to file early in the year. Then to finish the process, you want to do this thing called an operating agreement. We have some templates for that. Even a single member does an operating agreement. It's a sort of an agreement with themselves. It's kind of weird, but it's true. Need that. Now, here's a couple of different kinds of LLCs you should just know are out there. So the single member LLC, let's start with that at the bottom. So just a single person can form this limited liability entity around themselves, okay? Now, you should just know that the Franchise Tax Board and the IRS treat this as, well, for tax purposes, it's still you because it just passes through, and it's just you. But if you have more people in the LLC, then there's a couple of flavors of that. You can do a member-managed LLC, which means that all of the members have pretty much the same power to make management decision stuff. Or you can have a manager-managed LLC where there's somebody in the lead who is sort of managing most of the day-to-day and doing stuff. And that's where the members are more in a passive role. They may have more, a say, like if you bring in another member or if you close down, the decision to close down, any of those major decisions, all members have to pretty much weigh in on that. Okay, so we can fit you up with any of these types of LLCs that you want. Just know there's several different kinds there. Okay. All right, now we've done the limited liability, so the separation question. Now the question is, do you need a license or a permit to do your business? Okay, well, here's a good link. I found one on here, and this says, so it's a what is that, OSBA? I don't know what that stands for, but essentially use this link, and it should have a list of most of the licensed professions there. Again, with an LLC, you have to make sure that your licensed profession is licensed through the Business and Professions Code. But again, but then here's another aspect is maybe you don't need to be licensed, but maybe your business has to have a permit, like a food permit, something like that. Well, here's where you find that. It's called calgold.ca. Okay. And you just plug in there and it'll show you all the different permits that you need, zoning board, emissions permit, all of those. Okay, so check that out. If you are likely to lose a lawsuit if somebody was injured by your business there. Why? Well, oops. Hi, everybody. Hope I didn't drop off very long. I guess I'll go back to where we were before.
Hi, William. This is Dan. Yeah, it was cutting off right about where you went to the gold.
Oh, Cal Gold.
Right
Okay.
about there.
Oh, good. We didn't miss much. Okay, this is good. All right. Well, are we back now? Does everybody see the screen now? Hopefully.
Yes.
Cal Gold. Okay, good. Okay, so here's the thing you should know is that if you are doing some activity that requires a permit or a license, you don't get this, somebody's injured, oh my goodness, you are probably going to lose your lawsuit because it's called negligence per se. That means automatic negligence if you didn't have your permit that was relevant to the reason that people were injured, a food permit, somebody got food poisoning, yikes. Just don't do it. I would say strongly, don't do it. Okay, so now we're going to skip to the next question, which is how do you manage the risks involved in giving advice? Okay, well, I did mention that the limited liability shield might help you for other kinds of liability, like contractual liability or stuff. In this situation, first you need to exercise that expertise and level of care that's usually required in your particular industry. If for some reason you didn't, then the lawsuits in this situation are usually called something like this. You're sued for want of competence or undertaking a profession or trade without a license. Maybe you've heard of those people who started working and had themselves out to be a surgeon, and then it turned out they didn't have. That's a slide. So if you start giving out information and people just didn't what was that? There was some ad recently where somebody had a heart attack and somebody came up and said, oh, don't worry. I'm very smart. I know how to do this. Oh, there's still a pulse in his kidneys here. It's like, what? So it's like giving bad information and somebody is hurt by it. Or negligent misrepresentation that you were a professional and then, and there was physical harm related to it. So, all right. So how do you provide services and keep as much sort of protection for yourself as you can? Okay. Well, first thing I would say is have a written contract. Have a written contract. What I'm talking about there is setting expectations in the contract, what you will or won't provide. Here's an important thing. You might limit your promises there. You would usually want to say that you're not going to guarantee a particular outcome, okay? That you're going to provide services. And that wording I just used a minute ago, you might say something like, we will provide you with professional services with the expertise and care normally found in our industry here. However, we cannot guarantee a particular outcome from any services we provide, something like that. All right, now, and here's an important point. If there's mental health or medical issues are involved, man, always say, if you're having a medical or mental health emergency, call 911, go to the emergency room. I mean, you hear this all the time when you call your doctor's office or your therapist's office. Just definitely put that in whatever writing you have for your services. And even having your answering machine, I would say. Now, maybe if you're an engineer doing checking bridges, you don't need to do that. Okay? But as I said, if you're doing anything mental health or medical health related, do that. And then here you go. Describe some uncontrollable things that could happen that might affect your ability to finish the contract. I mean, if you're a painter, certainly put some things in about weather. If you are somebody who's maybe selling something where supply chains are important, then you would say something about, that our suppliers may not always be, up to date or able to supply us, and take, say you don't take responsibility for that. Okay. But here, finally, very important, getting insurance through a broker. If our friend Larry Tellis is there, he comes to workshops sometimes. Larry, I don't know if you're there, but he's a great broker, can help you find insurance and stuff. But look for a broker, through Google or something like that in your area, and different than an agent. Because an agent, like a State Farm agent, can only sell you State Farm. A broker can shop among a number of policies for you. And what you want to look for if you're providing advice is this, what's called E&O, or errors and omissions, or just plain malpractice insurance, that the broker will know what kind of insurance you're needing there. Now note that general liability insurance, many businesses have that. I'm right outside of Starbucks right now. I'm sure they have a general liability policy. That'll just cover you if, again, somebody slips and falls, somebody's burned by your coffee, something like that. It won't cover advice that you're giving. All right. Well, this last thing we want to cover here is independent contracting laws. Okay. Why is this important? Well, here's the thing. In California, this law came about 2 years ago, AB 5, supplanted by AB 2257 in September 2020. And it essentially says, look, independent contractors have to have certain characteristics. Otherwise, we're going to assume they're going to be employees. Okay, it's called the ABC test. Okay, it doesn't stand for anything in particular, like A is for what. It's just a 3-part test, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. But in a moment, what I was going to say is misclassification of an employee as a contractor is something right now that is very touchy. Hot topic in California, something you got to be very careful about. And I'll tell you why in a minute, but here's that ABC test I was talking about. So if you're going to be a contractor, okay, or if you're going to hire a contractor, this is the standard you need to use, okay? First, that the contractor has to be free from the hiring entity's control. This is actually the most traditional test that used to be the only test, which was to say, look, contractor, you can't stand over them. You can't give them all the tools they need. You can't give them the training that they need. You can't tell them to sit here in an office 9 to 5, something like that. No, they have to be like plumbers or website designers or something like that. They have to be given the project. They take their own tools, their own time and resources to do it. And then you pay them usually a lump sum of some sort, maybe maybe milestone fund, setup fund or something like that. All right, so that's the usual. That was the first part of the test. Well, it used to be the only part of the test. Now we've got these other 2 aspects that are kind of important. Okay, first is the second one, the B part, is that the work has to be outside the regular and continuous services provided by the business. Okay, what does that mean? Well, if you're a daycare center, your teachers should be employees. They cannot be contractors, okay? What is something outside the business? Well, I just mentioned a plumber. Yeah, maybe your business isn't a plumbing service. Maybe it's like a school, maybe it's whatever, but it doesn't need a plumber on board all the time. Well, a school, I guess, might need a plumber. But anyway, what I'm saying is your business doesn't need this person to be there all the time. Oh, sorry about the fire people. Go fire. So what I'm saying is that if a good way to tell whether somebody's appropriately a contractor is that you're just bringing them in because you don't have the particular expertise or stuff to get things done. You need a new website. You hire a website designer. They do it for you, then they go away. Okay. Marketers. Now, fortunately, AB5 has a marketing exception, but it used to be that if you had somebody marketing or doing sales for your business, well, that's continuous services. So normally that wouldn't pass, except for the fact that there's now a specific exemption for marketers. So that's really good thing. Okay, C, the independent contractors need to be in business for themselves, similar to a website designer or a plumber. They work for other people. Okay. And they don't actually have to work for other people. They have to hold themselves out as working for other people or able to be hired. Okay. So all three of these have to apply when you are doing a contractor, unless there's an exception. And there are a few exceptions, which we'll go over real quick. But here's that original tests, that test about control. Okay, and I'm going to, and you might wonder, well, why am I giving you the old test? Well, it actually still is important, which I'll show you in a minute. But here are some of the standards that used to be applied by judges. Okay, well, let me see. How long are the services going to be performed? Is it like over a year? Well, that sounds like more like somebody you need an employee for. But maybe you're building a building and that would take a longer period of time. Okay, well, again, it's a balancing kind of thing. Okay. The payment method involved. Yes, if you paid them a salary, that looks a little bit more like an employee. Contractors are more, by the hour or by the job. But again, this is sort of a weighing of things. Not one factor is going to kill you here. And it certainly doesn't matter very much what the parties think they're creating here. It's all, you have to follow those standards there. All right, so let's start looking at the exceptions. Okay, or exemptions. All right, so as you can probably guess, when this law went into play, there were all kinds of lobbying groups trying to get exemptions, and here they are. The lawyers got theirs, the doctors got theirs, the accountants got theirs. All of these people potentially are now exempted, so all you have to do with these folks is follow the control test, that Borello test I was just showing you there. You just can't control them very much, okay? And of course, if they have a professional license, they have to have their license there. Okay, here's some more. Okay, these professional service workers are exempt: graphic designers, translators, freelance writers, all these folks here. Again, they have to pass the Borello test. They can't be controlled very much. And then there's a few other factors. They have to set their own hours. They need to exercise discretion and judgment, that sort of thing. Okay, here's some more. Licensed barbers, manicurists, electrologists, not the astronomer types, the cosmetologists, the skin people. Okay, they are usually independent contractors, but they have to set their own rates. They have to, usually what happens is they're renting a chair in a salon, and so then they get a 1099 from the salon as to what income they had. That's usually what happens with them. Just know that manicurists are going to be, subject to the ABC test starting in 2020. All right, let's see, business to business. Now, here's an interesting exception here, because you should know that if you form this LLC, then automatically, pretty much, you are a business instead of an individual providing services to somebody. This is why a sole proprietor is kind of a suspect category of whether they can be contractors or not under AB 2257, because they may not fall into one of these exemptions. They have to meet the ABC test, they have to work for others, etc. But if you form a business through an entity, then you're no longer really an individual. You would normally be exempt from AB 2257 because of that. Okay, construction industry, subcontractors, again, they are exempt, but then there's a few requirements that they have to follow if you're industry. Okay. Finally, I think this might be the last one. Here's some risks. Misclassification. Okay. Why is this important? Well, this new law gave a lot of leeway for people to file lawsuits. It used to just be the Employment Development Department was on your back about this, but now, like, city attorneys and private attorneys can do this, can file suits for misclassification. And you should just know, this is kind of scary, it's a 4-year statute of limitations. So even right now, if you misclassified somebody 3 years ago, they could potentially come after you for past wages and taxes. So, scary. Watch that. This is why misclassification is really an important kind of thing. Okay. So just to recap, remember, we're talking about consulting is being in business for yourself, sharing your expertise, earning compensation. And so just to sum up, should there be separation between you and the business? Yeah, generally, if you're doing something risky, yep, Yep. But again, it'll be limited in terms of if you're providing advice, how much the limited liability entity will protect you. It's just will protect you against other kinds of liability, contractual liability, liability that doesn't come from your advice. You'd still probably want to have that limited liability shield. Do you need a license or a permit to do your business? Well, yes, if so, and use those links that we gave you, definitely need to get them or you're going to risk some bad liability there. How do you manage the risks involved in getting advice? Generally, it's, have the level of expertise in your industry that's common. Use the kind of care that is common in your profession, and use contracts to limit your liability and get a bunch of insurance, errors and omissions insurance in particular. And then can you be hired as an independent contractor? Well, again, if you are meeting that ABC test or an exception to the ABC test, exception to AB5 and AB 2257, then you should be fine. Okay, well, that's what we wanted to cover with you. Let's start looking at some questions. I think some of the questions may have jumped out of the chat. Hopefully somebody kept track of them. Let me come off of here right now and click to exit. And let me put my camera back on. Hopefully people can see me now. Yeah. Questions that people might have. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bill, for today's presentation. At the beginning, it was more of comments. I did check on here. I don't see any specific questions. I do want to remind everyone that today's recording will be sent to everyone that RSVP. And also, we will make sure to include the PDF of the presentation slides. That way you can review those as needed. So if anyone, those that have questions, please make your questions. You can unmute yourself at this time. And in the meantime, let me go ahead and read this one. So it's by Mr. Perez, and it says, I'm helping small businesses take advantage of COVID incentives like the Payroll Protection Program, Employee Retention Credit, California Small Business Grants. What are some risks that could be involved?
Well, it's great that you're doing that, Ed. Well, what I would say with that is that I don't see any particular kind of license that would be required in doing that. Again, I think only, you're holding yourself out as a consultant and with a particular area of expertise in these things. I would tend to say, but I would be careful about that. I mean, if you're giving them any kind of accounting advice related to the kinds of paperwork that they're doing, that would be something that I would be careful that you might need some sort of accounting training for that or certification. But if you are mostly just sort of saying, look, I know these programs and I know some of the troubleshooting involved, I know the people in the government to contact and all of that. Yeah, I don't really see a license there, but I guess I would say check that link that we did have in the PowerPoint for sure. But if you're not on the license list or certification or something, or if, here you go, maybe the Commerce Department has some certification requirements to advise about their programs or something, then of course check. Here's you go. I would say for any of the programs that you're advising about, just go back to the administrating office of them and just say, do I need a certification of some sort to be able to give advice about these things? And they probably say no, but it'd be good to check. But then you go back to what I was just saying in my PowerPoint, which was, okay, use the level of expertise common to the people who are giving advice in this area and the care, make sure that you're spending time with them, gathering all the relevant information. Oh, definitely document everything that you're hearing from them, the notes that you have, and document what you said to them in writing. But then I would also limit it in a contract. I would say, gee, I'm going to give you this advice, but I can't guarantee, for example, that you're going to get some of these loans or things, even if I give you the information about it. So definitely limit what the promises are in your contract. And then I would say, talk to the broker and tell them, gee, this is the kind of advice I'm giving, what kind of insurance I would need. I wouldn't think it would be errors and omissions, but it could be. I mean, I don't think errors and omissions is particular to licensed professions. So I would check, with the broker about that one. Just be straight with them about what you're advising. Yeah.
And would that include also assistance with payroll forms?
Yeah, I would say, again, I think you're on a sort of a fine line there about what an accountant does versus, a payroll company. I guess I would tend to say, You know what I would say about that? Maybe contact the accounting licensing board and just sort of find out sort of what short of an accountant's degree would be adequate to give certain financial advice. I know that like credit counselors have to have some kind of certification as well. So yeah, I would just be a little careful when you're giving financial advice on things. See how we do it. We're giving, like in these workshops, general legal advice. And so you just want to make sure that you give that disclosure to the person you're helping. Yeah. Yeah, oh, good. Thank you for putting those links in there, Sandra. That's good. Okay, let me do this next one. Dan, I write mobile food facility inspection reports that detail items that will need to be changed to pass on inspection with the local health department. Oh, okay. Well,
Bill, I didn't get a chance. I accidentally sent it. So my concern is I put a brief paragraph at the end saying, look, I did all I could with all of my knowledge as a former health inspector and registered environmental health specialist.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah. And so I did all my diligent duty to catch everything, but items may have been missed, such as, I don't get into the undercarriage. I don't get into the axles, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm only concerned about health and safety.
Yeah.
Hot water, 3-compartment sinks, hood ventilation systems. So I write down, I may not have caught everything. However, part of my service is I'll be with you during the inspection by the local health department.
Oh, so that helps too. I mean, to sort of say, look, anything I missed, we'll find it and we'll work on it together. That's really good. I think I might still add in your contract something that just says, I can't guarantee that you're going to get your certification from this or your permit or something. I will do the very best I can. I will give you all the knowledge that I have, but ultimately the decision isn't up to me. Yeah. So I would definitely put something like that in your agreement. Yeah. Okay. And then of course tell the insurance broker, this is what I'm advising. I actually think maybe in this case, an errors and omissions policy would probably be a good idea.
Yes, that's going to be my next step. Is to go that route. And I have some other questions, but I'm going to have a one-on-one with you on the 22nd.
Wonderful. Great.
So we'll go into more detail.
That sounds great. Well, we'll look forward to that, Dan. Yeah, it'll either be me or Mariana Acevedo Nuevo or Kelly Woolfolk, one of our 3 attorneys. So good.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Did we have any other questions there, Sandra? What do you think?
There's no questions on the chat box, but if
anybody else
participants wants to unmute yourself and ask the question live, this is a good opportunity.
Please.
Oh, perfect. Yes, the 101 meeting. So let me go ahead and share the link on the chat box to be able to schedule a 101 consultation. I know they're taking place Mondays, Wednesdays upon availability. Of course, it's by appointment only. So please take a look at the link that I shared on the chat box for a 101 meeting.
Actually, an easier one. Let's do our website here. Let me do that. www.law.berkeley. Whoa, come here. Geez.
I could grab it from the presentation.
I got it here. NBCLC.
Does anyone else have another question? Or if you want to leave it on the chat box, let us know. Like I mentioned, everyone will be receiving a copy of today's recording as well as the presentation slides.
Great. All right, guys, and good luck with giving advice and everything. It's so important at this time that people get some guidance on things. So many complicated things out there. All right, well, good. Well, thank you. Thanks, Sandra, for hosting us. And our next workshop, as we said, is going to be focusing on contracts and how to be a master of contracts in terms of writing them. Yeah, there you go. Reviewing them and enforcing them. We'll give you some little tips. Some things should be helpful.
Likewise. Well, thank you so much, Phil, for your time for today, for being our speaker. And thank you every single one that joined us for the call. I appreciate your time, and you'll be receiving the presentation recording. And we will be making sure before the year ends to send out a survey so that you can let us know of those topics. We have some topics already selected, but we want to get your feedback to make sure it reflects the needs of our small business community. So thank you. Hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving break with your family and your loved ones next week. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.